Just a quick note, I'm going to stick this clip in front of my usual update. This is the CRTK Woods Chogan. And CRTK stands for Columbia River Knife and Tool. So this is a really nice tomahawk that they make. And I have one, and somebody asked me to make them a sheath for it. So I will, and I'll be cutting these out pretty soon. So those will go live on Amazon, Gunbroker, eBay, probably within the next couple weeks. So I'll have a pattern out that I just cut these out on. So if you've been looking for a leather cover for your CRTK Woods Chogan, that should be coming out soon. And I hope you all like that. Also, in the Tomahawk area, I forgot, I had made these a while back. These are just simple belt loop tomahawk holders that you can, this part goes on your belt, and then you just stick your tomahawk through this hole. So it hangs like this. And then obviously you'd have your cover on there. So this would hang off your belt. I'm also have a pattern for a simple fold over round type tomahawk loop that you can put on your belt. It'll look like that. Let me turn it right side up for the camera. If I only had that third hand. So it'll be like that. And you just stick that through your belt. It won't have snaps or anything. It'll probably be all riveted, no sewing. So again, stay tuned for some tomahawk sheaths and belt holder updates. Alright, now to my bi-weekly update. Enjoy. Hello friends and neighbors, welcome back to Outside the Shop and another bi-weekly update. I have been working hard, and I have started to make these pouches. These are my regular 10-22 10-round magazine or Heritage 22 cylinder pouches. The only difference is they have this stud. I'm still working on the stud. It can be a little hard to open, so I went to go make this hole a little bigger, and unfortunately I came up with this, and now it's just a little too easy to open and close. So that could pop open on somebody at the range or in the bush. So that's a little too easy to open. So I'll have to get that hole just a little bit smaller, just so there's enough friction to hold it closed. Now you could always push this down, and that'll kind of lock it in. But if something sets on top of that, you see how easy it is to push down, and then it pops open on its own. So I will be selling this one as a second, and so if you're looking for one of these and don't care if it pops open on you, you're welcome to buy it. But I would wait for the production model to come out myself. So there's that. And then there's the double 10-round magazine holder. As I said, they will be more because they're a pain to do. Not only do you have to put the stud in, but there's a screw on the back. Inside there is a screw, and it's got a protrusion about 2 millimeters, so I have to put a piece of leather behind that, because otherwise it'll scratch up whatever's in there and could damage it. So that's why you see this thread here. There's a little circular patch of leather that covers that screw. And when I put these studs in, I use a little bit of white glue to keep them set. So just like Loctite. So just so they don't go anywhere, they don't start coming undone. Over here I don't know, I guess was in the mood. This will be another Tom 3-persons holster. And if you're not familiar with the Tom 3-persons holster, the upper part covers the cylinder with the bottom part covering the barrel, but it doesn't have any covering for the handle or the trigger guard. It's just open trigger, a very open holster. I will have a hammer thong on this one, but this is just a concept. And for people in Arizona, there's your flag. So this should be coming up on Gunbroker pretty soon once I finish it. And I might make a bunch of these with different flags. Obviously not the more complicated flags, but for like Texas, Arizona, and yes, actually I may do a California one, because California, thank you. For some reason, y'all buy a lot of 22 stuff, and I appreciate that. So I'll probably put your flag on one of these next. This is the most heinous piece of equipment known to man. This is a leather lace cutter. And what you're supposed to do is make a circle of leather and then turn this in a circle, and it's supposed to cut lace. And I have never gotten it to work that way. Believe me, I have tried. And this is a fresh stainless steel blade in here, and I still couldn't get this thing to work. So let me show you what I've done. These two rings, you can move them back, and it's going to take 2 hands, so hang on just a second and I'll show you how you get the blade out to make this modification. On mine, I can just use my fingers to move these 2 spring clips out of their groove, and so that they no longer hold the blade. And then what I'll do is I'll stick a screwdriver or some other thing in there to hook that blade and pull it out. And you probably won't be able to see it on the camera, but there's 2 lines on this one. You can go short or you can go tall, and this blade is in the tall one, but it doesn't help, and I'll show you why. Hang on just a second while I pull this blade out. So I've now pulled the blade out of this thing, and I don't know, maybe it'll show better on white, maybe not. On the bottom of each one of these channels, during the manufacturing process, there's a ridge made, and it holds up the leather that you're trying to push through there. And so what I've done is I've taken a piece of 220 sandpaper and I've sanded that little ridge. You got to put your sandpaper between the 2 channels and sand back and forth, and you'll reduce the ridge in the middle. Don't do it too much, because then you'll change the depth of the actual cut. So here we are with some 220 grit sandpaper, and this will be perfect. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in this little groove, and then I'm going to sand back and forth to remove that little ridge that's in there, which you can hardly see, but it does catch up the leather. and that's part of the problem that's preventing this from doing its job. So let me show you what it looks like in there. So you get the picture. You can put it in the little groove, push it down to the bottom, and then start sanding. And like I said, you probably don't want to use like really coarse sandpaper, because then you'll really change the shape of the channels, and you don't want to do that. So let me sand this out, and I'll be back in a second. Now, if you can see in the channels, that's all sanded down on the bottom. So because it's abrasive and getting that plastic, it may be a little harder to move, but you won't get caught up on that ridge. And here I think you can see the two lines. There's one line here at the bottom if you want a shallower cut, and then one line here if you want a taller cut. So I use the taller of the two. Let me put this blade back in here and I'll show you how I cut my lace, because I sure, after several times of throwing this thing up against the wall because I couldn't cut the circle, I couldn't figure that thing out. I'll show you how I do it. Okay, just a word of caution, because this thing will take your fingers off if you're not handling it correctly. So locate the sharp end, the cut your finger off end, and keep that away from your fingers. Never push on the sharpened end, always push against the dulled end, and use a tool if you can to avoid getting your fingers on that, because maybe from experience, maybe not, I know that this will definitely give you a pretty good cut on your fingers, so try and avoid that. Oh yeah, and this is the type of blade that goes in this lace cutter. It's the same type of blade that goes in the Super Skiver. I think it's the Super Skiver. Yeah, that this blade goes in. They make stainless steel, and they make another kind that's black, so take your pick. I haven't found really any difference. Let me put this back in. Okay, now our blade's in there, and you can see the channels, the different size channels that this can cut. This is the rear of the blade, and now what I'm going to do is, I don't want to do that whole circle jerk thing because it's a pain. So what I'll do is I'll cut a straight piece like this, and then I'll run this through the lace cutter. Now you got to remember, some lace like this I cut with the strap cutter because it can handle this thickness, but this lace cutter will not handle this 9-10 ounce leather. So or maybe that's 8-9. Make sure that the thickness of leather is going to fit in the channels before you start cutting. Otherwise you're just going to be pushing against the plastic and it won't give, so you'll be out of luck. So let me show you how I set this up. So now I have my flat piece of leather set up against the lace cutter, and what I'm just going to do is I'm going to hold the lace cutter in one hand and push the leather through with the other, and because it's just straight and sitting against the bottom of that channel, it should just run through. So I'll do that now. Alright, so now that we have it started, what we can do is, I like to keep a finger like this while I'm holding on to the lace cutter so that it keeps the leather against the bottom of that channel, and then with my other hand I'll take the piece that started and pull it through the lace cutter, and we should get a nice piece of lace. Let me show you. And bingo, we've stopped messing around with the lace cutter trying to go in circles, and I've cut just this little piece of lace. No problem. I wanted to show this lace that I cut earlier with the same method, and I usually use a belt length lace. That way I can just cut off pieces that I need. So from a whole hide, I'll take my strap cutter and maybe cut an inch wide strap that's about 60 inches long, and then I'll run it through the lace cutter and get a piece of lace like this that's about 60 inches long. That's pretty strong. That's not going to come apart without some serious pulling on it. And it's still got to be dyed. But that way when I do a project, all I have to do is come to this lace, cut off the amount I want, dye it, and wax it, and then I'm done. I don't have to mess around cutting lace every time. It's already cut for me. There is some waste associated with that, but the waste in leather will be minimal compared to the waste of time if you don't sand out those little ridges in the channels, number one, and number two, if you try to run this in a circle around a circular piece of leather you've cut out, or even if you have like a good large piece of leather and you're trying to run this in a circle, you could ruin that, and then you can't use it for any other project. So I highly recommend not using it the way some people show. I highly recommend just setting it down and drawing the piece of leather through it, and you'll get a nice cut of lace. This is John with Big Chief Leatherworks. Y'all have a blessed weekend.